Hi, you're on the Reddit Confessions channel. I still remember the scent in the room when it happened, lavender detergent and a faint trail of her sister's perfume. I never liked that perfume. Too sharp, too obvious. But I wasn't supposed to be home yet, so nobody knew I was standing just down the hall, one shoe off, keys still in hand. Marin, my wife of 6 years, was sitting in the guest room. The one with the green walls she said always made her feel peaceful. She was laughing. On speakerphone. With her sister Imelda. And then I heard it. He's not a bad guy. He's just the man I settled for. Settled for. Settled. Like a dust layer on forgotten furniture. They both laughed. I didn't. I stood frozen, like someone had unplugged me. No panic. No rage. Just silence. Not even tears. You'd think after years of pouring everything into a person, your love, your routine, your weird little quirks, they'd at least lie to your face out of respect. But she didn't know I was there. That was the truth. He makes me feel nothing. Like, it's not even hate or anger. It's just blank. Like watching paint dry in an empty room. I don't know how long I stood there. Could have been 10 seconds, could have been an hour. But when she ended the call and I heard her footsteps approaching, I moved. Fast. Back downstairs, grabbed the grocery bags I had left in the car, and walked in through the front door like I had just arrived. She kissed me on the cheek. I smiled. She asked if I remembered to get almond milk. I said yes. That night, I lay next to her, wondering how long I'd been the man she settled for. Was it from the start? Was it after we adopted the cat? Was it after I gave up my dream of working overseas to stay close to her dying father? Did it even matter? I didn't confront her. I didn't scream or cry or demand answers. I just started watching everything more closely. The way she smiled at texts she never explained. The way she barely touched her food when I cooked. The way she flinched when I said, I love you. And the worst part? She never once looked at me like she regretted anything. I wish I could say I left that night. I didn't. I stayed for months, waiting, hoping she'd give me something. But she never did. So I left. And 3 years later, she showed up at my door. With a confession. And a child. The day I left, I didn't slam the door. I didn't leave a letter. I didn't even pack like someone planning a fresh start. I took one duffel bag, half full. Just the essentials. I left my toothbrush, my favorite sweatshirt, even the watch she gave me for our 4th anniversary. I didn't want anything that might slow me down. The house was quiet that morning. She was still asleep upstairs. I stared at her for a moment, wondering if she could feel it, what I was about to do. But she just rolled over, sighing in her sleep, completely unaware that her settled-for man was about to become her ghost. I moved into a crummy short-term rental that smelled like wet carpet and regret. The bed sagged in the middle, and the shower made a sound like a dying vacuum cleaner. But I needed the silence. I needed the kind of loneliness that punches you in the chest so hard. It forces you to remember how to breathe on your own. Marin didn't call. She didn't text. Not for days. Then, on the 5th day, she messaged. Did you take the blue folder? I need the bank docs. No, where are you? No, why did you leave? Just logistics. I stared at the screen, the words burning through my skull. I didn't answer. And she didn't follow up. That was the first real confirmation of what I'd overheard. If she had even an ounce of confusion or hurt, she would have asked something, anything. But no, I was an empty chair in a silent room. The divorce was quiet. Almost too quiet. She didn't fight me on anything. I gave her the house. She gave me the car. We split the savings evenly, even though I'd contributed more. I thought she'd cry at the hearing. She didn't. I thought I would. I didn't either. I just sat there, numb, watching the pieces of a life I built drift away like dust in sunlight. But here's the thing no one talks about when you walk away. The silence that follows is deafening. I didn't suddenly feel free or empowered. I felt erased. I kept waiting for some kind of emotional clarity, some peace. Instead, I kept asking myself the same question every night. Was I really that easy to forget? Over the next year, I tried to rebuild. I moved into a better place. I started therapy. I bought a new couch that didn't remind me of watching TV with someone who didn't love me. I even tried dating, but every time a woman would smile at me, I'd flinch, waiting for the moment I'd overhear the truth again. And then 3 years passed. 3 whole years. I stopped thinking about her every day. I stopped wondering if she missed me. I thought I had finally closed the chapter, until I opened my door on a rainy Thursday afternoon and saw her standing there. Marin, hair soaked, lips trembling, mascara smudged. She wasn't alone. Next to her stood a little girl, about 2 years old. Same red curls, same green eyes. And the first thing Marin said wasn't hi. It wasn't I'm sorry. It was, we need to talk. Please. It's about her, and it's about you. I didn't invite them in right away. My brain was still catching up with what my eyes were seeing. Marin, the woman who once looked through me like I was transparent, was now standing on my porch with a child she claimed was somehow connected to me. I couldn't stop staring at the little girl. She was holding a stuffed giraffe by the neck, her thumb halfway to her mouth, wide green eyes flicking between us like she could sense the tension even in the rain. Her name's Ivy, Marin said quietly, hugging herself like she was freezing. Can we come in? I know I shouldn't just show up like this, but I didn't know where else to go. I hesitated, then stepped aside. She walked in like she still remembered every creaky board, every light switch. She hadn't been inside this place ever. And yet, somehow, she walked like she belonged. That irritated me more than it should have. Ivy toddled in behind her, dropping rain droplets everywhere, and plopped down on my carpet without a word. My heart was beating hard in my throat. We sat at the kitchen table. The silence stretched so long I could hear the hum of the refrigerator. Then Marin spoke. She's yours, Jonah. Those 2 words hit me like a truck. I almost laughed at first, just from how absurd it sounded. I hadn't seen Marin in over 3 years. We hadn't touched in the last 6 months before the divorce. I blinked, opened my mouth, closed it again. No, I finally said. No, that's not possible. She looked at me, eyes full of something I hadn't seen before. Guilt. Actual, raw, choking guilt. I lied about a lot of things, she said, voice trembling. The timeline. Us. I didn't think I'd ever see you again, so I told myself it didn't matter. But I was wrong. She slid a manila envelope across the table. I didn't want to touch it, but I did. Inside were printed copies of paternity results. My name. Ivy's name. Clear as day. 97% match. I gripped the edge of the table, trying to stop myself from falling apart. All I could think was, how long have you known? She answered before I could ask. I found out just after she turned 1. I didn't want to believe it. I was seeing someone else back then. I thought she was his. I was so sure. But when she got sick, they ran blood work. Something didn't match. That's when I started wondering. So you ran a test behind his back? I said bitterly. She nodded. He left the moment he found out she wasn't his. He didn't say a word, just packed his stuff and disappeared. My mouth was dry. My fingers were numb. Ivy was sitting on the floor, drawing invisible shapes into the carpet with her hand. And now what? I asked. You thought you'd just show up and what? Hand her off to me. No, Marin said quickly. No, Jonah. I need your help. Not money. Not custody. Just help. She deserves to know her father. The rage I'd buried years ago began to bubble under my skin like boiling water. I wanted to scream. I wanted to flip the table. But Ivy looked up just then, and I saw it. My eyes. My exact expression from old baby pictures. And just like that, my anger turned into something far more dangerous. Curiosity. That night, after Marin and Ivy left, I didn't turn on the lights. I sat in the dark like some kind of ghost, holding the DNA test in one hand and a glass of cheap whiskey in the other, trying to stitch together the years that had been stolen from me. Ivy was mine. That wasn't just a number on a page. It was a shift in gravity. A quiet little truth that restructured everything I thought I knew. She had my eyes. My nose. Even the way she tilted her head when she was confused. It was me. There was no denying it, and somehow that made it worse. Marin hadn't just lied to me. She'd erased me. She'd stolen 2 birthdays, the first words, the first steps. I had missed scraped knees and bedtime stories and that ridiculous toddler obsession with closing every open cabinet door. And now she wanted to just plug me in? Like I was a missing puzzle piece she conveniently remembered existed? I didn't sleep. I didn't even try. At dawn, I drove. Nowhere in particular. Just roads I hadn't taken in years. I ended up outside a playground near the old library, parked and watched the world come alive while my heart tried to decide whether it was broken or burning. That's when I saw them again, Marin and Ivy. She hadn't seen me yet. Ivy was toddling toward the swings, her little fists gripping the chains like they were anchors. And Marin, she looked exhausted. Not her usual polished self. No makeup, hair tied back, sweatshirt stained with something pink and sticky. I didn't feel satisfaction seeing her like that. I felt something uglier. I got out of the car, still unsure why. Maybe I just needed to see it all with my own eyes, to confirm that she wasn't making this up, that Ivy was real, that this wasn't just Marin trying to anchor herself to someone reliable again. As I approached, Marin turned. She froze for a split second, then gave me a cautious smile. She wanted to come back here, she said softly, as if we were strangers. I looked down at Ivy. She looked up at me. No fear, no recognition, just wide-eyed wonder. She looks just like you did when you were little, Marin added, as if reading my thoughts. It's freaky sometimes. You should know. You were the one who held my baby photos the most. I replied coldly. She nodded, accepting the sting. She's smart, Marin said after a moment. Loves stories. Talks to her stuffed animals like they're alive. She lines them up and pretends they're having meetings. You did that too, remember? I did. Vividly. But I didn't say anything. Why now, Marin? I asked, turning to her. Why not a year ago? Or when you first suspected? Why wait until everything was falling apart before showing up at my door? Her mouth tightened. Because I thought I could handle it, she said. I thought I could give her everything she needed without dragging you into it. But the older she gets, the more she asks. And I don't have the answers. And I see you in her every single day. I thought maybe I could live with the lie, but I can't. Not anymore. Ivy called out then. Mama, push. Marin turned, gave her a half-hearted smile, and walked to the swing. I stayed behind, hands in my pockets, every instinct in me screaming to run. But my feet didn't move. I watched as Marin pushed Ivy gently, murmuring something that made the little girl laugh. And that laugh? It cracked something wide open inside me. I realized then, I couldn't pretend she didn't exist. Not anymore. 2 days later, I knocked on Marin's apartment door. I don't know what I was expecting. Maybe silence. Maybe hesitation. But the moment she opened it, and Ivy came running toward me with her tiny giraffe flopping in one hand, I realized nothing could have prepared me for what it felt like to have your own child recognize you without knowing why. She didn't hug me. She just stood there, grinning like I was a cartoon character she'd seen before, and suddenly stepped out of the TV. It was devastating in the gentlest way. Marin stepped aside, letting me in. Her place was small, cramped, lived in. Toys scattered across the rug. A toddler-sized shoe under the table. Laundry basket in the hallway, overflowing. There was no trace of the meticulous Marin I remembered. No sleek throw pillows arranged like showroom displays. No color-coded spice rack. This was a mother's space now. A life built around snacks, sticky fingers, and schedules. You want coffee? She asked, heading to the kitchen like this was normal, like I wasn't a ghost walking through her world. No, I said, watching Ivy dig through a plastic bin full of blocks. I want answers. She sighed. I knew that sigh. It meant she was about to deflect or downplay something I had every right to be furious about. I get it, she said. I do. You want to scream at me. But she's asleep in the next room most nights, asking why she doesn't have a daddy. I told her families come in all shapes. But she's not dumb, Jonah. She sees kids at daycare with their dads, and she asks why hers is invisible. You made me invisible, I said, sharper than I meant to. You didn't just lie, Marin. You stole time. 3 years of her life, gone. I know, she said quietly, not looking at me. I was scared. That's not a reason. That's an excuse. She flinched, but nodded. For once, she didn't argue. She reached into a drawer and pulled out a small notebook. Worn edges. Stickers on the cover. She handed it to me. I started writing in this when I found out she was yours, she said. Letters. Updates. Like a diary. For you. In case I ever got brave enough to find you again. I opened it. The first entry was dated nearly 2 years ago. She said her first word today up. She meant it for me, but it made me think of you. Always lifting people. I kept flipping. Notes about teething, about tantrums, about the first time she laughed so hard she hiccuped. Scribbled drawings. Taped in photos. A ticket stub from the zoo. It hit me like a tidal wave. I wasn't just missing facts. I was missing feelings. 100 little moments I could never relive. I don't want to be a guest in her life, I said slowly, still looking at a Polaroid of Ivy dressed as a ladybug. You don't have to be, Marin said. But this has to be on your terms. If you want in, you're in. But not halfway. That's when Ivy waddled over, holding up a purple crayon like it was a treasure. Draw Jojo. Jojo. She had a name for me. a name no one gave her. She made it up herself. And just like that, my decision was made for me. I sat down on the floor beside her and picked up a crayon. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't resolution. But it was a beginning. The more time I spent with Ivy, the stranger it felt walking through my old life like a tourist in someone else's story. I'd sit in Marin's living room with Ivy on my lap, watching cartoons that made no sense and laughing at things I didn't understand, while Marin folded laundry a few feet away, like we were some oddly shaped family that had quietly glued itself back together. But every so often, I'd catch her looking at me with that cautious glance, like she still wasn't sure if I'd vanish again. One evening, after Ivy had fallen asleep on my shoulder, Marin came out from the kitchen holding a worn photo album. Not the kind she used to show off, curated with perfectly arranged snapshots of tropical vacations and holiday parties. This one was messier, heavier. She handed it to me without saying a word. Inside were pictures of Ivy, baby photos, birthday candles, hospital wristbands. But what shook me were the blank spaces. Marin had left empty slots next to every photo, little notes scribbled underneath. He should have been here. Or, Ivy's first swim. Couldn't stop picturing him holding her hand. Each blank spot was like a silent scream. I turned a page and found one photo of Marin and a man I didn't recognize, holding Ivy at what looked like a park picnic. Marin quickly reached to flip the page, but I stopped her. "Who's that?" She hesitated. "That was Logan. We were together for a while. He thought she was his." The burn behind my eyes was instant. I closed the album. "How long were you going to let him think that?" "I didn't know," she said, voice shaking. I was in denial. I convinced myself she wasn't yours because that made everything simpler. I thought I was doing the right thing by giving her a complete life. I stood up, my hands clenched. "No, you gave her a false life. There's a difference." She didn't argue. That almost made it worse. I wanted her to fight back, to defend it. But Marin just sat there, letting the weight of the moment fill the room like fog. "I came here because I wanted to know my daughter," I said. "But this feels like stepping into someone else's dream. I don't know where I fit." Marin looked down. "You fit where you want to fit, Jonah. I'm not asking you to be anything except what you're ready to be. But she already loves you. You know that, right?" Did I? I wasn't sure. Ivy liked drawing with me, clinging to my leg when I left, falling asleep during car rides. But love? That was sacred. That required time. And I wasn't sure if I'd ever be able to untangle my feelings about Marin long enough to give Ivy the father she deserved. Later that night, back in my apartment, I stared at the ceiling for hours, replaying everything. Her first smile at me, the crayon drawings on my fridge, the weight of her head on my chest when she napped. Somewhere between guilt and grief, something shifted. I wasn't angry anymore. I was just scared. Scared that I would never live up to what she needed. Scared that I'd try and still fall short. But even deeper than fear, there was something else beginning to take root. Responsibility. And that's when I knew I couldn't just dip in and out. I had to show up. Every time. Even if Marin was part of the equation. Even if the past still haunted us like shadows on every wall. Because Ivy wasn't part of my story anymore. She was the story. It happened on a Tuesday. I remember because Tuesdays had become our thing. I picked Ivy up from daycare around 3, and we'd spend the afternoon together. Parks, puzzles, pancakes, whatever she was in the mood for. It started small, innocent. She was in the back seat of my car, swinging her legs and humming a made-up song. I looked at her in the rearview mirror, and she looked back with that squinty-eyed grin she always gave me when she was trying not to fall asleep. Then, out of nowhere, she said it. "Daddy, can we get ice cream?" The word hit so hard I nearly missed the turn. It wasn't tentative. It wasn't a question she was testing. It was just a fact. Like that's who I was to her now. Not Jojo. Not Jonah. Just, Daddy. I pulled over, pretending I had to check something on my phone. But really, I was just trying to stop myself from crying like a man who had waited 3 years to hear one word. I'd spent so long wondering if I belonged in her world. And with that single sentence, she made it clear, I already did. When we got to the ice cream place, she picked mint chocolate chip and asked for extra green. I didn't even know what that meant, but the teenage kid behind the counter just nodded like he got that request all the time. Ivy climbed into the booth beside me and started chatting about how the moon sometimes follows her when she walks, and I just listened, soaking it in like someone drinking rain after a drought. But that perfect moment couldn't last forever. Later that night, after I dropped her off, Marin pulled me aside. She looked tense, guarded, like she'd been holding something back. "Ivy called you Daddy today," she said. Her voice was flat, unreadable. I nodded. "Yeah, she did." There was a long silence between us, the kind that hums with everything you're too afraid to say. "She's getting attached," Marin said quietly. "This is real now." "I know," I replied. "No, Jonah. I mean, this is real. Like, it's not just weekends and crayons anymore. She's building you into her identity." I didn't like where this was going. "I'm not leaving, Marin, if that's what you're worried about." "That's not what I'm worried about," she said, looking away. "I'm worried that I still don't deserve this, any of it. I screwed everything up. You, her, all of it. And now she's calling you Daddy like I didn't spend years keeping you out of her life." I didn't answer right away. I just stared at the kitchen floor, remembering all the nights I'd sat in a cheap apartment wondering if anyone even noticed I was gone. "You can't erase what happened," I finally said. "But you also can't rewrite what she feels." She chose that word, Marin. "Not you. Not me. And I'm not going to pretend it didn't matter." She looked at me then, really looked. For the first time since she showed up at my door, she wasn't trying to justify herself. She wasn't hiding behind sarcasm or silence. She was just open, scared. "I keep waiting for you to hate me," she whispered. "I did," I said, "for a long time. But that's not what Ivy needs now." And that was the first moment where the past didn't feel like a wall between us, but more like a broken bridge we were finally starting to rebuild. Not for us, but for her. Marin didn't say anything else that night. She just nodded, eyes glossy, and closed the door gently behind me. I walked to my car, sat in the driver's seat, and exhaled for what felt like the first time in years. The truth was, I wasn't sure where this story would end. But for the first time, I wasn't afraid to find out. 6 months later, my living room looks completely different. Not because I bought new furniture or painted the walls, but because now it holds things that didn't used to exist here. Tiny socks on the couch, glittery stickers on the coffee table, juice boxes in the fridge, and bedtime books piled high next to the armchair I used to read alone. Ivy lives with me 3 days a week now. At first, it was just weekends, but it grew naturally. She started asking if she could stay longer, and Marin, after a lot of cautious talks, agreed. Our co-parenting isn't perfect. Sometimes we clash. Sometimes old wounds reopen when we least expect it. But we both love Ivy more than we hate our past, and that's what matters now. Last week, Ivy had a family day at daycare. Parents were supposed to come in, help with crafts, maybe read a book. I walked in nervous, unsure if I was just a stand-in dad trying too hard. But when she saw me from across the room, she screamed, "Daddy," so loudly that every kid turned to look. She ran straight into my arms, no hesitation. The teacher smiled and said, "She talks about you all the time." That single sentence healed something I didn't even know was still broken. Afterward, Marin texted me a photo Ivy had drawn. It was the three of us, stick figures, smiling, with a sun in the corner and hearts floating in the air. She labeled them, me, Mommy, and Daddy. I stared at that drawing for a long time. This wasn't the life I planned. It wasn't the relationship I envisioned, the timeline I wanted, or the clean ending I thought I needed. But it's real. Messy, imperfect, and deeply real. Ivy doesn't care about the scars we carry. She just wants us to show up. And I do. Every single time now. So no, I'm not the man Marin fell in love with. But I've become someone far better, because I'm the man Ivy runs to, laughs with, trusts completely. And that's everything. You've been watching Reddit Confessions. If you've ever had a moment that completely changed your life, something small, something unexpected, drop it in the comments. Was it something you overheard? A decision you didn't see coming? We'd love to know your story. Thanks for being here. See you in the next confession.